Hello everyone, it's Jayma Malney. Welcome back to another scrapbook process video. This week I'm joining the creative design team and we're sharing ideas for shakers. My project is a shaker layout and it's good timing because I've had requests to show how to add shakers to layouts. So I hope that you get lots of ideas from our videos. Be sure to catch all the rest of the videos. I will link the playlist at the end of this video. So I'm going to be scrapbooking these two photos of my kids. It's their school photo and then first day of school. So I thought the colors went well together. This isn't as, professional and like fancy background, but it is what it is. And I thought that this background went perfectly with fall, and back to school is kind of correlated with fall. So I decided to use the Crisp Air collection. I mean, how perfect are those colors? So this is a look at the whole collection, and I will be using a lot of these patterns. This is already all of them flipped over. I really love this one, that patchwork quilt look. Look at those pumpkins. I love those splatters. So really cute designs. And then this is the sticker sheet that you saw laying there. I also have the Crisp Air dots. How cute are these? These are like gold or copper like glittery dots, and then other colors that coordinate with the collection. And I love that it's dots and stars and hearts in all different sizes. So those are super fun. And then in order to make it a little bit more school themed, I've got the crafting shapes dies. And the best part is these are on clearance for 50% off right now. So not only are they great for crafting, but they also represent a lot of school supplies, right? So it'll be perfect to tie in the school theme with the fall theme. I've decided to scrap lift myself today. So I placed everything where I know I'm going to want it, and I'm going to bring in one Versamat since I'm doing a one-page layout, and that's going to help me line things up later on. So I've already got my frame style layout sort of laid out. I'm going to gut my papers so I don't waste that center part, and I've had some people ask how to do that. So I wanted to show you that really quick. It's very easy, and how much you gut depends on how much is going to be showing on the outside. So I have my Sapphire cardstock here cut to 10 inches square, and then my white cardstock is just under 9 3/4. I think it's like 1/8 of an inch less than that. So I know I'm going to have a 1-inch border all the way around. So I want about 1.5 inches to have some extra space to glue. So you have to use a trimmer that's like this, like a cut rail trimmer. You can't use a guillotine trimmer because that won't let you start 1.5 inches in. So I'm going to line up my paper to the 1.5 inch mark. And then I'm going to start my blade up at the 1.5 inch mark. And then I'm just going to go up to 11.5 inches because that's 1.5 inches down from 12 inches. So that's how easy it is. I will just keep turning it. Let's see, I want to measure from this side. So I can go to 1.5 inches, and then we will do the same thing, and we'll just do that all the way around. And just like that, we have our paper gutted. So this piece I will be able to save for another project. So I'm just gonna go around the edge, and that will catch on that extra 1/2 inch that we have. And because I'm working on my Versamat, I can make sure that I line this up at exactly 1 inch. I think that is pretty good. If you wanted to get it exact, you can bring in your T-square ruler. This is nice because it catches on the edge of the Versamat. So you can line up your background paper, line this up at the 11 inches, and make sure it is all the way even. So this I have just a tiny bit high, but that's okay. It looks good to my eye, and I'm not going to worry about it. So now I'll bring my photos in, and I did cut these down just 1/4 inch smaller than 4x6, and then I added a 4x6 white mat because I'm gonna have some colors around here. I wanted my photos to really pop. I may add another sapphire mat, so we'll see. And when I was cropping my photos, what I kept in mind was I knew I was going to have this photo on top because I wanted to cover this blank space. So I cut the 1/4 inch from this side so I would have that space to overlap. And then on this photo, I cut the 1/4 inch from this side. I could have cut 1/8 of an inch from each side, but I decided to cut it just from this side so that it would have, since it's going to be overlapped here, and then that way I have some space over here to add some of my embellishments. I'll probably have some embellishments here, maybe here and here. So we'll cover up those more blank spots. So I've cut a bunch of circles using my shaker window dies. So these are created to go with the shaker window foam and acetate, which are these, and I'm going to show you how this works. Like I said, I'm scrap lifting myself, so I already have an idea of how this is going to lay out. And in my other layout, I've got sort of a grid of circles in the background. That's going to give us lots of color and interest and some really fun shakers. So I'm going to just sort of place these around the page. I'm keeping in mind the visual triangle because I want to make sure that my colors are evenly spaced around the page. Maybe put this one here and another one here, maybe another one up here. And I cut a whole bunch of patterns because I wasn't sure exactly which ones I wanted to use. I don't really like how this is just diagonal. We don't have enough circles showing to make it exactly 3 each, but I like that better, so it's kind of like this, not just exactly catty corner. So those are all spaced out nicely. I think I'm liking that, but I'm not quite sure about the yellow. I was thinking I wanted yellow because of the yellow in here and in the background, but I might actually want to switch it to the paprika for a little bit more contrast. I'm not normally a huge paprika fan, but I think in this instance, it actually helps the yellow pop more because it's not yellow on yellow and there's not so much yellow. We've already got yellow here in the background, and so we'll bring that in with some more accents, but I'm liking this a lot better, and I'm thinking that these paprika pieces are going to be my shakers. I want to make these circles that are more white on white stand out, so I grabbed some toffee ink to ink around the edges, and that's really going to help those pop. So I'm going to pounce my ink, my dauber into the ink, and then just ink around the edges. I chose a color that's fairly light just so it would give a little bit of pop but wouldn't be too harsh. And I thought about maybe bringing in Paprika or the Sapphire and inking around, but I didn't want to have such a dark contrast, and I've already got those colors right here. And I want to add the same ink around all of the circles. So for these darker pieces, you can see it doesn't show up as well because it's darker, but you can definitely still see the edge. Now, this one I did the same as this with just a little bit of ink around the edge, but since the shaker is going to be on these, you're not going to see the edge. It's going to be covered about almost 1/4 of an inch in. So what I'm doing on these paprika pieces is bringing the ink in a little bit farther, so it's almost a vignette inside of the shaker, and you'll see what I mean once we get these shakers put together. But I'm just, instead of going right on the edge like this, I'm bringing it in more. So probably about 1/2 an inch in. So we'll have that sort of vignette look on the inside of the shaker. Okay, now what I did was I made sure that all of my circles are evenly spaced. So I've got probably about 3/16 of an inch between each of these circles. I'm going to remove my photos, and then I'm going to glue all of these down except for the paprika ones, and then we will work on our shakers. All right, I've brought my photos back in because I want to see how much of my shaker I need. I've only got 1/2 a shaker here. I've got more than 1/2 showing here and here, so I definitely want to use full shakers. But from the last layout I did, which was actually a few years ago, can you believe I still have the 1/2 of a shaker from that? So instead of using the full shaker, I'll just use 1/2 of it since that's all that's going to show. So let me show you how these work. You can use these shakers on cards or on layouts. Traditionally, they've been used on cards, but it's really fun to use them on a layout as well. So there was that protective cover on the acetate that I just peeled off. So here is what the full foam ring looks like. So these come as a kit in the shaker window foam and acetate with, it's either 5 or 6 of each of these that come in there. And so this together will make your shaker, and then you'll also want the shaker window dies because that gives you this base ring, and then like I showed you, this other ring that will cover it to kind of cover this ring. And then the hearts and stars can be used as confetti if you want, but I'm going to use my own pieces to put inside. All right, so what I like to do is take my foam and use my piercing tool to just go around and make sure that the glue is separated from all of the other pieces. And then I'm going to peel this outer ring off, and then that will show you the adhesive. Now, the foam adhesive is super sticky, so once you've stuck it, you're not getting it off. Now, a lot of people will peel this whole ring off. It's easy to do that if you get your piercing tool under there and sort of lift it. But I find that when I do that, my circle gets misshapen. So I like to just leave it on here. And then what I'm going to do is line it up right on my paper, on my circle, just like that. If it's not exactly perfect, that's okay, because our outer ring is going to cover it up. And then you might be wondering, well, now how do I get it off? So you start peeling this outer part off, and then this is why we separated. So once you get this outer bottom piece off, you're going to sort of bend this back, and that will release it from all of those other foam pieces that are in there. And then you've got just the ring on there. Now these are just bonus foam pieces. Keep those in your stash and use those on other projects.
I wanted to jump in and take a moment to let you know about the 31 Days of Christmas cards. Registration is now open. This is an event that we've put on the last 3 years, and it's so fun. We put on a Christmas card class every single day in October. There are 60 plus card ideas because we show more than one card in every video. And there's an early bird pricing right now, so check out the description for all the details. What you see on the screen right here is all the cards from last year, and we have a special offer for last year's replay as well. All the information can be found below in the description of this video.
So now we've got the base of our shaker, and I'm just going to take my little anti-static bag and run it around there so that my little shaker bits don't stick to the edge, because there is a little bit of stick there still. All right, and then we've got the base of a shaker. We can fill it with whatever we want. So I have a variety of sequins here. I've got the Autumn Mix, which is no longer available. I'm sorry, I hate showing you guys stuff that you can't get anymore. But there's also the Silver Sequin Mix. I've got some clear loose gems that I thought would look pretty. And then I've got these little heart embellishment. These are wood grain hearts that are used to kind of stick on as embellishments, but I thought it might be fun to put a few of those in our shaker as well. You want to use some pieces that are big enough that they're not going to flip in your shaker, because then you're going to show the white side and you don't want that. So I'm going to just put a few of those in varying sizes and shapes. I'm going to use a few of these just because it goes so perfectly. Now I'm using mostly silver accents, and these are more of a gold, but they're kind of like a silvery gold. So we're just going to make it work. And then there's some little paprika pieces, some copper. There's a whole bunch of fun little things in here. And I'm just going to put a little bit of those. I don't want too many leaves because I don't want too many big things in there. Just kind of do that. And then I'm going to bring in some silver too to tie in those silver glitter toppers that we're using. There's a little star that got in there. That's cute. And we'll do a little bit more silver. There's an iridescent one. I just want the silver to look balanced. I normally don't pick out exactly what I want in this shaker, but I kind of wanted to for this. And then I'm going to put just a little pinch of these loose gems. Those are really fun. Okay, so I think that's going to be enough in there. So all I need to do is just line this up and put it on. Again, be very careful that you stick it where you want it, because once it's down, it is down. Okay. Now we've got our little shaker. And I forgot to mention, I was trying to make sure that all of my little pieces were flat in there so they don't get sandwiched and stuck. I'll make sure it's just stuck on there really well. And then we just need to adhere our little ring And then we've got our little shaker. And now that would be really cute to put on a card too, but it's gonna look adorable on our layout.
I'm going to speed this up a bit because this video is getting quite long, but I wanted to show you a lot of the process in real time, especially the shakers. So I've got the little topper on that shaker, and now we're going to do the half shaker. So I had that half ring left over from last time. So I put it down on the base, and then I'm going to use those little leftover foam pieces to make the edge of my shaker so that those bits don't fall out. Now you're going to see here in a moment that I should have put these little pieces closer, like on the inside of the shaker, because now the half of my shaker topper, the acetate, is not going to fit. So I'll get off all of those adhesive backings and then I will fill the shaker. I wanted to show you here that there's a couple of pieces that I'm going to glue toward the top of the shaker. Since the other shaker I did is at the bottom of the page, the top of the shaker doesn't really show. But on this one, the top of the shaker is going to show. So I wanted to glue a couple of those pieces so that they didn't all fall down. So now here I'm adding the full acetate sheet. I just trimmed off a little piece of it, and so much for trying to save some of my supplies. Oh well, it happens in crafting, right? So I'm going to add the little topper on there, and we are all set on this one. I did the third shaker exactly the same way as I did the others. I glued a couple of the pieces at the top, and that's going to be a full shaker up in the top right. So to adhere them, I found it easier to put my adhesive down on the base page first and then adhere the shaker. And now when I put my photos on, you're going to notice that there are 3 circles that are now raised. The rest of them are not. You could put all of the circles on foam if you wanted, but instead what I'm doing is I'm using some of those foam squares that we have left over from the shaker kit to the back of the photos, making sure they're not in the same place as the shakers because we don't want foam on foam. And then I will adhere them down onto the page. I did take my Sapphire ink pad and rubbed it around the edges of my photo mats. Rather than matting them in a second mat, I decided to do that just to help them pop a little. So now I'm going to do some stamping, and I'm using this Crisp Air Scrapbooking stamp set that has coordinating dies to create my own embellishments. I really liked how the stamps were layered up on that layout in the catalog as well as on the cover of the catalog, so I'm going to sort of recreate that. I'm stamping tone on tone onto colored cardstock rather than on white cardstock because I didn't want the white border for these. So I'm using pine cardstock and pine ink. The pine ink is quite a bit darker than the pine cardstock. As you can see, I've got it on the dark side of the cardstock. However, if you wanted even more contrast, you could use the opposite side of the cardstock because all of Close to My Heart cardstocks has a light side and a dark side. So I did a few of those like viney looking leaves and a couple of these smaller leaves, and then I'm going to stamp some of the flowers. I've got Paprika ink and Sundance ink as well as the coordinating cardstock. I'm going to do some different techniques with these flowers. So since I haven't used these stamps before, I am seasoning them on my hands. I just rub them on my hand. You can rub them on your arm or rub them with an eraser, and that will make sure you get all of the like manufacturing gunk off and they stamp really nicely. I'm also working on the back of my Versamat, which has a cushy surface and provides a lot of give for your stamping. If you don't have a Versamat, there's a foam piece inside of every stamp set that will provide cush as well, but I highly recommend the Versamat. So you saw me do some rock and roll on this last one, and I'm going to do it again on the Sundance one so it'll show up better. So I'm putting it in the Sundance ink first, and then I'm rocking just the edges into the darker Paprika ink to give it that two-tone look. I've done this before. You may have seen me do it. Just make sure when you do this, you stamp it in the lightest color first and then roll it in the darker color. So this smaller flower, there are 2 stamps that are very similar. They both have dies and they're both about the same size. So it's hard to know which die coordinates with the flower. So you just have to kind of test it out. I found this one that has like 2 little bumps and 1 bigger bump. That's the best way I can describe it, is what worked. So here is the Crafting Shapes die set, and I wanted to show you there are lots of really little pieces, and I try to keep the pieces that go together on the magnetic sheet. So the pencil especially has some really tiny, tiny pieces, and they're very easy to lose. I already lost one of the silver pieces that's like the metal piece on the pencil, so I had to cut that one out again. But I'm just going to show you real quick how these come together. So that glue bottle had 3 pieces. The scissors have 4 pieces. So you cut the longer pieces out of, well, I did it with the silver foil cardstock. You could do it with anything that you want. I wanted that metallic finish like scissors. And then the little handles you'll glue right on top. And then you'll glue those together. This one on top has the little hole in it. That's the one that goes on top, and I like to use my tweezers for putting these little pieces together because it really helps you grab those small pieces. For the even tinier pieces for the pencil, I found it helpful to bring in my pickup tool. This has a wax on the tip, so it catches and picks up these little pieces, like it'll pick up paper or sequins, and it's nice because you can just sharpen it if it starts to lose its stick. So now I've got all my little pieces together and we can start embellishing the layout. So I'm going to start with my larger pieces. I find it easiest to start with the larger pieces when creating embellishment clusters and then work down to the smaller pieces. So I started with the longer leaves and then I'll move to the flowers. I'm going to put a smaller flower layered on top of each of the larger flowers. So I'm just trying to decide if I want orange on orange or yellow on orange or orange on yellow, or how I want those. And with this bottom embellishment cluster, I had the ruler and then I had the pencil. They were both yellow and I was thinking I wanted them in opposite clusters, but since they were both long and skinny, I didn't like the look of the layout with 2 long and skinny pieces in different parts of the layout. So I've just put them together and kind of like crisscrossed them. And then I'll add yellow in the other embellishment clusters to be sure that I have that spread out evenly in our visual triangle. It took me a few tries to figure out where I wanted those scissors. They'll be tried in several places. I didn't like them in the top left. Started thinking maybe the bottom left, but it was too much blue on blue with that glue bottle, so I wanted to spread those out a little bit more. And they were also a little bit long and skinny, and so I also didn't like another long and skinny piece, so I was thinking I'll crisscross them again over here with the ruler and pencils, and it's gonna end up over here sort of like this, but I'll move it around again. I brought in another long viney leaf from the sticker sheet. I wanted to bring in a few pieces from a sticker sheet just to add more of that like watercolory look that is in the background papers. I'm going to bring this one up to the top left. I will end up adding it there, but I'm going to set it aside for now until I figure out my title.
I decided I wanted my title to say Back to School, and I found this stamp set in my stash. It's called Months of the Year. It is still available. I saw this back to school, but the whole look of it didn't go with my layout. So I decided to stamp it and then just cut out school. It was pretty easy to do with those lines on the top and the bottom. I stamped it first in the Sundance ink and then rolled it into the Sapphire, just like I did with some of those flowers. And then as part of this stamp set that we already used, there's these little banner stamps and a banner die cut here. So I cut out 4 of those, and that's what I'm going to put back onto. I wanted to show you how I was inking it. I went around the edge just like I did with some of the other shapes earlier, but by just going around the edge, it was a little bit too stark of a look for me to go with the rest of that kind of watercolory look of the page. So what I did was I just kind of brushed a little bit in, like once I didn't have much ink on there anymore, I sort of very lightly went over the base of it. So the bulk of the ink is around the edge, but I've got just a light coating and it gives it sort of that like distressed, almost watercolor look, and I think that blends a lot better with the rest of the page. I'm going to go ahead and ink around the edge of this too, just so that it matches everything else. So it'll just stick out kind of like that. So if I had used this whole thing, not only does the back 2 really clash with this style in my opinion, but that block style wouldn't have looked as good as just a more skinny element here, so you still see those patterns behind there. Otherwise, I would have had to cut out more of a block for that title, and then these little banners allow kind of a little bit more up here where there was some empty space. And then I have this starter alphabet. This is a new alphabet that I thought was the right size, and it kind of goes with this font here. We're going to have a few different fonts going on, but I think that's okay. I was trying to decide if I wanted them in Sapphire ink or Paprika. I've already got a lot of Paprika, and as I mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of Paprika. And then Sapphire has tended to be sort of my anchoring color. But before I completely decide, I've got some letters on a sticker sheet, and so what I can do is hold them up to see what the color looks like. And yeah, that draws up way more Paprika than I want. So let's just make sure that I like the Sapphire. Yeah, that's gonna look a lot better. So I've got the Sapphire ink, and then for each stamp, since I haven't used these, I'll just season them like I did everything else. Make sure it's right side up, and just stamp it. Remember to hold it for just a moment, let the ink soak in, and then we've got our first letter. So I'll do the rest of them just like that. Now that I've got that in place, I need to add my two. So I pulled out one of my small alphabet sets. If you don't have an alphabet set that's small, look through your Christmas stamps and you might have some to from stamps. So I tested it out. I didn't want the uppercase, so I used the lowercase, and I tested it out a couple times to make sure I had it lined up how I wanted. And then this can be a little scary, stamping right onto your layout, but don't worry, we've been practicing. Just make sure it's inked up well. All right. There we go. If for some reason it didn't turn out for you, then you can just take a little piece of paper, stamp it onto there, and then glue it on and cover that up. But I think that that looks great.
All right, off camera, I adhered everything down and I added some of those crisp air dots. Look at the shake in those shakers, it's so fun. So I put some of the elements up on foam using those leftover foam squares we had. Aren't those little dots cute? I used the round ones and the hearts, and I thought that the hearts worked perfectly because I used hearts in the shakers. So that's that layout, and let's look at my inspiration layout. So as you can see, the layout I scrap lifted from myself is very similar, but I switched it up to fit my photos and to work with the paper and embellishments I had. I used one 5x7 photo here instead of two 4x6s, and I also used very different paper and put some larger pieces in the shakers. If you were inspired by this layout, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more scrapbooking videos. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out the playlist here on the left for the rest of the creative design team projects using shakers. And don't forget to check out the description below for the 31 days of Christmas cards info and the links to the supplies I used. Have a great day!